I just wonder what, in view of, recent issues with Black Lives Matter, how do you feel the Paralympic movement can help show that injustice and discrimination is not tolerated? For me, it's so important. As the BPA, we can only take athletes who are selected, who meet the qualification standards, but we can have a role maybe in inspiring more people to get into sport. And it's really interested in your thoughts on that.
I definitely think, we are at a really important time, almost a crossroads actually for humanity, because we have an opportunity through unfortunate circumstances, what happened to George Floyd, and I think it sparked something in people in the UK. I don't think people have quite made that connection with the Paralympics yet, and the struggle and the journey that people with disabilities have had to go through. But I think there are definitely parallels there, and there are things that we can learn from each other. The Black Lives Matter movement can learn from the disabled, the Paralympic movement. And I definitely think there are ways that we can work together. One of the things for me, what the Paralympic movement highlights and it shows is that if we give people opportunities to shine, the sky is the limit. And the really what makes people disabled is not their disability. It's not the fact that you have cerebral palsy, or the fact that you have polio, or the fact that you're an amputee. It's society. Society is what holds us back. It's that systemic discrimination and oppression. So if in a country that you live in, that they don't have accessible transport, they don't have accessible buildings, and people don't see other people with disabilities around, then you create that discrimination. I become disabled. I'm disabled because society has not allowed me to shine, not because of my disability. And what the Paralympics has shown is, when you take away those things that hold people back, you give someone the adequate sports equipment, the correct coaching, you give them the event where they can go out and be the best that they can be, right? That's when they shine. And that's when you have a whole group of society that goes out there and achieves something incredible. Right now, with the BAME community and the in particular the Black community, for hundreds of years we have faced oppression, and we've never been able to properly shine because there is inbuilt racism within the systems of our society. And what society has to look at is, look what's happened to our Paralympians, to our disabled people, when we've given them that opportunity to shine. We need to give that to everybody. Yeah. Can we honestly say right now that you can look, if you have, I want to have kids someday, and can I honestly say to myself, if I had a child tomorrow, that I could look them in the eye and say, you know what, doesn't matter about the color of the skin, doesn't matter whether you have a disability, you're going to be able to be the best that you want to be. I can't honestly say that at the moment. And that is a shame. That is a shame. And we have to change that. And I think the Paralympics shows what can happen when we try to change that. But look how long it's taken the Paralympics. Look how long it's taken the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when you talk about transport, because it can work the other way in some ways. If you think, not long before I was born, which is quite a long while ago, Rosa Parks decided that segregated in a bus on basis of colour was not right, and then that became unlawful. But as someone with a disability, you're segregated in transport because it's easier to stick you in a little certain section of the train or the bus because that's convenient. So it's discrimination by design almost. It's like we have to put a space by law, so let's just make a little spot here, rather than thinking, what's the most inclusive space for people with wheelchairs, for mums with pushchairs, for people with luggage, or elderly people? How do we make that space the best use for everyone, for all of society, that everyone can thrive, rather than saying, okay, we just put the disabled people in this section of the train, and that's where, you know, if it burns down, that's where you'll find them.
I mean, so, ultimately, Nick, we've got to ask ourselves this question: do we really, as a society, want to tackle inequality? You know, we've got to say that, because at the moment we're not doing what is necessary. You know, because it's been talked about for years. Oh, we'll have this scheme, we'll have that diversity scheme, we'll try and open more doors for, and I see it because I intersect disability and race, so I see discrimination from both angles. And I've seen so many schemes that come out. We're going to have more schemes to have more disabled people, we're going to have more schemes to have more Black people, and yet we're still not much further than we were 20 or 30 years ago. Yeah, you know, a lot of people will say, well, there's progress because you no longer. I remember in the 80s it was common. People would shout out, they'll call me a cripple in the street, or they'll call me the N-word in the street, or if I was unlucky, I would be called the N-word and a cripple, you know, on the street. And that no longer happens. That sort of overt discrimination doesn't happen, which is progress in a way. But I think the harder progress is that one that's systemic, that one that's the unsaid discrimination, where you know you can't get a job because of your disability, because maybe for the employer it's too difficult, they think it's too difficult to accommodate you, or you don't get a job because of the color of your skin, because they have that sort of prejudice. And that is the discrimination that we need to rid ourselves of. And it's far harder. It's a lot easier to get people to stop shouting those words out in the street, because now, you know, people would frown on them. You know, it's not easy for someone to get away with shouting that out. I would hope not on the street today. But it's a lot easier for someone to say, well, I'm not going to employ that person. They don't have to mention it, whether it's because of their disability or the color of their skin. They can come up with any other excuse, and it's hard for us to prove it. And that's the type of discrimination that we need to rid ourselves of in order for us to progress.